We're going to do is replace glass in a sash. This happens to be a thermal window 7000 series sash, which means the glazing bead, which is this piece right here, is on the outside of the window. Sometimes it'll be on the inside if it was a 5000 series, but it doesn't matter. It's always going to be a piece of glazing bead that holds the glass in place. So the first thing that we want to do is we need to remove this glazing bead. What we're going to do, we just take a putty knife. You'll need a putty knife. This is what I call a wallpaper knife. It's got a long blade on it. You'll need some glazing tape, double stick tape, and you'll need a little block of wood and a hammer. Those are basically the essential tools that you're going to need to do this job. It's very simple. Everyone gets all excited when they hear about I need to replace glass, but it's a very simple task to do, which we'll proceed to show you. So the first thing we want to do, as I said, we want to remove our glazing bead. And glazing bead are just snapped down into the vinyl frame. So you take your putty knife, if you can zoom in here a little bit. We take our putty knife and we get between the frame and the glazing bead where this line is. And what you want to do is you want to get in here. So you want to take your putty knife and get into that groove, and you see how it pushes away, and then this lets you pop this glazing bead up in the air and it comes out. You see how it has a little hook on it, and that hook goes down into the groove that's in the vinyl. So you take all four of these pieces out. You can do it this way. Once you get it started, you got to get them popped up in the air, and then they'll come right out of those grooves. First one is always the most difficult. You want to make sure that you don't ruin them, because you need to reuse these. So you get your putty knife, and it has to be a skinny putty knife, in that groove, and you pry them up out of there. If it's cold out, you really need to get this to where it can be a little warmer, so that those don't crack or anything. So those four are now out, and I just set those aside, and you can see it's got the groove around the glass where they snap into. So then I take my knife, and this is why I like the knife with the long blade. I flip it over. I take this knife with the long blade, and what there's double stick tape around this piece of glass. So I take my knife, and now I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to cut this seal all the way around. Just be careful as you're doing this. You just go all the way around. You don't need to remove the hardware. Just come around like this with the blade of your knife. You see what I'm doing? Doesn't matter how big the sash is. Just be careful when you're doing this. And now what I did, I broke the seal between the frame and the glass. So I can now take and I can push that glass out because I broke the seal. So now I take my piece of glass out. If this glass was broken or fogged up or steamed up, and I would throw that away. And then I'd have my new piece. What you see here are stoppers. This black button, you'll see some down here on the bottom. That's just to keep the glass off of the frame and give it a little bit of a space. So at this point, we'll pretend that this is our new piece of glass. If it was white sash inside and outside, or if it had a grid that was white inside and outside, you're normally going to see a sticker on your window. And that sticker is always going to be toward the outside of the house. This one will be easy to determine because it's wood grain on the inside and white on the outside. So we know which is the exterior and which is the interior on this particular piece. So I would take this block. Always make sure you save the blocks. These blocks so that you can put back into the window. So I'd set that piece of glass away, and what you have now is, you see where this double stick tape was on your window. Okay, I clean that up a little bit. I don't bother tearing that all out of there and making sure that I'm down to the bare vinyl again. It does not matter. Okay, so then what I want to do is I want to take my new double stick tape and I want to go around this window. So I just come in here with my double stick tape and I put right over top of where that old tape used to be. If you can zoom in here, you'll see what I'm doing with it. So I come in here like this, and I'm going to go all the way around and just butt them up against it. Don't overlap them. Just butt them up against. It doesn't have to be exactly right on top of the old one. If you can, that's fine. If there are any bubbles or bumps or anything in there, I do clean them off, but like I say, I don't need to get down to that bare vinyl again. So I just come in here and I go all the way around with this tape. And I go like this with it. And it comes to here. And I put my last piece on here. Just like this. Okay. I cut them here. Okay, then what you want to do is, you've got that tape all the way around. If you did not have any double stick tape, there's one other way you could do it. If you had some clear silicone, put it in a caulking gun, you could go all the way around with a bead of silicone and then set your glass into that silicone. Just watch it doesn't squeeze out. If it does, you need to clean it off a little bit. So that's another alternative if you didn't have any tape. Now once that tape's on there, this is a little tedious. You need to get that tape, you need to get those edges of the tape rolled back a little bit. And I roll them back about 2 inches and I go like this with it. All 4 corners. You need to have that tape rolled back. And this sometimes can be a little tedious to get it. And I'm trying to do it quickly to not waste a lot of time, but it looks like this. And I do it at each corner. And the reason I do it at each corner is a bigger window sometimes, that tape, when you're trying to remove that tape, once the glass is in place, if it breaks off, and then you're not getting a seal at the glass where it meets that foam tape, because it would still have this plastic on it. So I go from both sides. It just gives me a safety barrier that I have, that if it does break, I can now pull from either end and still get that plastic off so that I get a good seal. So I have one more corner here to do, and I leave them in like this. And I'll get to my other corner here. Okay, just like this. Okay, and you can see those 2 blocks, those 2 bumper blocks here at the bottom that you see. Sometimes you'll see them on the sides. Maybe there's 1 on the side, maybe 2 on the side. It doesn't matter. It's just so that you square that up good and even in the middle. Especially if you're using grids, because you really want them to line up with the grids that are below. Say if this was a new piece of glass, we know that this is the exterior, it's white, so we'd have our white grids facing up. If it was just no grids, it would have a sticker, and our sticker would go toward the outside. So your new piece of glass, you just take your new piece of glass like this. I'm going to set it in here about as even as I can get it. And I just drop it in like this. And it's pretty evened up. And I can put this spacer back in here if I wanted to on the sides, but you see I'm pretty even, and I have the 2 spacers on the bottom. So now what that did, that glass set back in to the frame. Now before I pull that tape back off to make my seal, a bigger window sometimes will want to try to bow or belly. So you need to make sure that it's nice and square before you pull that tape off. I use a tape measure sometimes, and I measure. If this is 15, I make sure it's 15, and then 15 in the center. I double check my measurements. So next thing you want to do, you want to take your parting beads and you want to put them back in. And you just snap them back in. Sometimes I use a block of wood to help me get them back in. If I have to tap them back in, that's what that block of wood is for. I'll just take the hammer and a block of wood and I'll go like that. This little sash, you really don't need to do it, so I just come around, butt this one up to where it's supposed to go, push it back in place. You'll hear them snap. See, I have this one a little bit long right now, so I can just take and I can tap it back over to where it goes. Yeah, you can tap them around them a little bit. There we go. And then you take this one and I'll put it back in. That's in. And then I'll take my last one. I'll put my last piece of parting bead back in. Just like this. And like I say, if I need to tap them with a hammer or anything, I can do that. This one's a little bit long, so I want this one to come down this way a little bit. Okay, so those lay nice and even in here. So now my parting bead's back in place, and I can fiddle with it and tap it into place, make sure it's nice and even. Then I flip this over. I do my measurements. Now I'm going to grab hold of those little tabs. I'm going to start to pull this off. When I pull that off, now I took this piece out, take my side pieces out, take my side piece out. We have one more to go. And see if this would happen to break right now. Say that would break. If I didn't have the other piece to start with, I'd kind of be in a predicament. So I always have the safety measure. So now that that's out, I flip it back over and I just press my glass down against that foam tape, and it makes my seal. And I just make sure these are all back in place where they're supposed to be, my parting beads. Clean my glass off, and there's my new sash. That took about 5 minutes, and I'm trying to explain it. So that's today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something from that. Okay?